Welcome to Tales from the Trenches Tuesdays. Today, it is my honor to speak to me. I'm not going to give you my bio, you can read about that on LinkedIn, but I thought I would answer some of the common questions that have been around on Tales from the Trenches Tuesdays. I certainly hope that you guys are enjoying the videos that I put out. It's a little bit of a different format when I interview my guests. It usually winds up being somewhere between 30 and 50 minutes worth of taping, and then I break that down into 3, 4, or 5 episodes and put them out usually in cycles of 4. So anyways, I really do hope that you've been enjoying it. One of the questions I always ask my guests is, how was philanthropy spoken about growing up? So for me, it was really deeply entrenched in me. And a lot of that has to do with my values as a Jewish person. I attended synagogue services regularly, something I still do to this very day. For those of you that are in Ottawa, you may see me walking my 10 kilometers each way to synagogue on Saturdays, weather permitting. But there's an interesting little stat that those that attend religious services, whatever the denomination, donate more and are more likely to leave a bequest to a charitable organization than those that don't attend services on a regular basis. Furthermore, I thought that was really neat is those that provide for charity in their estate plans live longer than the general public, 6 years according to the actuarial tables. So I guess, the moral of the story is make sure that you leave a bequest and make sure you go to services on a regular basis. But anyways, growing up, my family was always involved and donated and volunteered time, treasure, and talents. I was lucky enough to have my grandparents live around the corner from me growing up, and they were an exceptionally generous folk. I was actually one of the Silverstein family was actually one of the strongest families in London, especially in the Jewish community. My great-great-grandfather came. There were 6 in that next generation, and then it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But they were in the fish business. That was before the days of Loblaws and your corner grocery store carrying fish. So they were fishmongers. And they were very, very successful in that. So successful, actually, that my grandfather was the first Jewish person to be put on the local hospital board, St. Joseph's Hospital, which was a Catholic institution. In those days, the Jews weren't overly welcomed onto the boards of non-Jewish or ecumenical groups. And my grandmother was on the founding committee of Block Parents. It started in London, Ontario. So we don't have that anymore, but it was a little sign in the window for the kids going home after school that if they were in trouble, they could go knock on a door that had that Block Parent sign in there and get some help. So that's kind of how my philanthropy was spoken about growing up. We always had discussions at the dinner table about volunteering. It was strongly, strongly encouraged. My parents never spoke about necessarily how much money they gave to different organizations, but they certainly did share those organizations that they gave money to. So another question I seem to be asking folks is, how did I become, or how did you become a fundraiser? Well, I have to say it all started in about grade 9 or grade 10 at high school. In London, Ontario, in those days, the residential canvas for the Canadian Cancer Society was entrusted to high school students. I don't believe they do that anymore. And I volunteered to be a canvasser. And I have to say it was for less than altruistic reasons. It was just a great way to get out of classes. But I absolutely loved it. So this was probably in the early 80s, and I got a gift of $100, which in those days was absolutely massive. And I found out that this donor had lost a son to cancer. So obviously there was that really neat emotional connection. So firstly, I was absolutely energized by the fact that there was that connection. But furthermore, I was energized in the fact that I got a crisp $100 bill, which was like unheard of in those days. I was so enamored with the whole concept that I stayed on as a volunteer with the Canadian Cancer Society. Through my college days, I actually stayed in town in London. And I was the co-chair for the residential door-to-door canvassing for the London Middlesex County of the Canadian Cancer Society. So I absolutely loved my time there. And so they had some staffing changes, and a friend of mine or he became a friend, was the executive director of the Canadian Cancer Society, that branch. And he said he had a buddy of his that's also a fundraiser that was starting his own fundraising consulting firm. And he thought that maybe I would be a good addition to that. So he made the introduction, and that's really where I learned most of my information about how to canvass, capital campaigns, things of that sort. But it was kind of cool because, being the nice Jewish guy, I specialized in Unitarian and Catholic churches with some arts and Masonic lodges thrown in for good measure. But everything I learned about major gifts were through those intense capital campaigns. So that's kind of how I became a fundraiser. I'm one of the few folks that have been a fundraiser my entire life. It never kind of fell off the side of my desk. It wasn't a mid-life crisis. I was much too young for that. I experience midlife crises now. So that's really how I became a fundraiser. And the more that I've dealt with in fundraising, whether it be for arts, social service, religious, community organizations, the more I see that there's so many myths that are out there that people think about fundraising. I remember there was an individual once that was in a leadership position at a nonprofit, and she said to me, she says, "Jack, I'm not a fundraiser. I facilitate philanthropy." And I'm scratching my head going, that didn't sit well with me. I thought that perhaps she was thinking of fundraising as an untoward role in the community. It's something to be embarrassed about. And nothing could be further from my truth than that. I think fundraising is an exceptionally noble profession. In an ideal world, no one would ever have to ask for money. You just wake up and there'd be a pile of cash sitting there, and you'd be able to do whatever you could do for your organization, whatever needed to be done, whether it was a new widget or helping folks out who need sheltering, whatever the case is. In an ideal world, you just wake up in the morning and there'd be enough funds there miraculously. But you need to ask for it in the reality. So I think that when she said to me that she facilitates philanthropy, it kind of, I'm scratching my head, and nothing against folks that do gardening for a living, but, you can be a gardener, or you can be a landscape architect, right? And I think that there's, the people who call themselves landscape architects without the actual architectural designation kind of see themselves as, well, gardening is beneath me. So this lady actually thought that fundraising was beneath her. So I think nothing could be further from the truth. And it stuck with me to this day. I think I had this discussion with her 20 some odd years ago. But it's always kind of stuck in the back of my mind that we really have an opportunity. And if fundraising is done right, I've had donors actually thank me for facilitating that gift. So where does that kind of gift come in? Well, it's really that sweet spot. You have the donor's needs, and then you have the organization's needs. And where those two meet, that's the sweet spot, and that's where you can get a gift. But it's all driven by the donor's need. Your needs are irrelevant. So where if you have the donor's needs and your needs and that intersection point, that's your sweet spot. So I know that was a little bit about Jack. I'm going to do another one in another couple of weeks, just because that's the way the scheduling worked. I really hope that you folks are enjoying the Tales from the Trenches Tuesday. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, ways that we can make this better, just send me an email, info@yucks.ca, yucks.ca. Please subscribe to the channel, and I do hope to see you soon. L'chaim.